next part of the segment here. And it's just a last, maybe, a 5 to 10 minute closing to kind of introduce a little bit about Blumaka, which is your most recent endeavor. We have been wearing one of the insoles that you guys have been creating, the Konnect insole. But give us a little intro to what is Blumaka.
Well, tell me, how's it working for you?
I was going to say the big thing is we'll be putting out our full review, so you'll get all of our thoughts. Cool. But do one of you guys want to go first?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to go? David, you go.
I think the material is great as far as shock absorption, but it does add some volume within the shoe. And so since the insole tends to sit up a little bit higher, it does tend to require a little bit more of an adaptive upper on the footwear piece itself, which is one thing I have noticed in terms of lacing and locking it down. The texture thing, I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I like it. I get the concept and the idea. And this was in a separate email thread, but we were talking about team sports. And I could see the use there. I could definitely see just having that traction and connectivity to the ground. I'm still trying to figure out if I like it for linear running. But overall,
I think that's a good question.
Yeah. But I think the actual compound of itself is pretty promising, and I think it does increase that stack ever so slightly and reduce some of those not ground reaction forces, but perceived impact upon loading. I've put it in several racing flats, and I've put it in several trainers, and I've played around with it a little bit, and it does seem to change the perceived landing forces upon landing. And so I think there's some promise there, and I think it just depends on the right usage for the right person.
I think another quick thing, just so that for people who are listening who don't know anything about this, one of the main parts of this Konnect insole, Konnect, the idea is that the top of the insole actually is a very grippy material compared to any other kind of insert you have in your shoe where you could slide your foot around on it. This has a material that the sock kind of sticks to. And so you can definitely feel that in running. You got to, I'd say I would agree with DJ on a lot of the perceived comfort, some of that increased stack. It does have a 4 millimeter drop to it as well. So it can change some of these shoes that I had issues with, like Carbon X3 was too voluminous for me and I couldn't get a lockdown. So this kind of made a bit of an adaptive ability there for that. The Ultra, we were testing an Ultra shoe and this gave me a little bit of a drop instead of being a 0 millimeter. So, and the foam itself feels nice and it's definitely grippy. And when you're putting I don't know if you noticed this, Stuart, but putting the shoe in, you really got to loosen the laces. Otherwise it's kind of sliding around.
It's a piece of equipment. This is a jock strap, not a boxer short. You got to put stuff in the right place.
Yeah, it's got to be secured. And I think these all were a little bit short, like the size 9 insert was a little bit shorter than my shoe. So if I wasn't careful, it would slide forward a little bit. I'd say that was one of the things where if it was just longer and then I just cut it to size, I don't know if that would be a viable thing. But yeah, the cushioning is definitely nice and more robust than a typical insert.
Well, let me jump in here a little bit. So Blumaka, blue means blue earth, blue water, blue sky. We're committed to that. And Maca is a Native American word for earth. So blue earth. And it's also a Hawaiian word for beloved one. So it's really about how do we take care of things. So the one thing I like about what you just talked about, the Blumaka Konnect insole, is none of you mentioned that it's 85% recycled content.
Right.
So the foam, 85% of the foam in those insoles, we literally gathered up from the back of a shoe factory, and it would have been on its way to a landfill or a burn pile, an incinerator, to pollute the planet if we hadn't gathered it up. There's nothing wrong with that foam. It wasn't squashed. It was trim waste, right? And that happens to be a supercritical foam that you're testing there. And I will guarantee you it will last a heck of a lot longer than 150 miles. But the Konnect insole that you mentioned, so I love the fact you were talking about the performance of the insole, but you never mentioned that it's recycled material. I think that's cool because one of the things I think you fight in making products that have a lower carbon footprint or are better for the environment, they think, well, if it's recycled, it can't be as good. And when you compare it to the same thickness of insole pound for pound, ounce for ounce, thickness for thickness, that will compare with any virgin foam insole on the planet Earth. Okay? And we could make them thinner. You know, I know the aftermarket, it's 10 millimeters thick in the heel and 6 in the forefoot. Maybe we should go down to 3 in the forefoot or taper it. We can do all of that to adjust for the fit. But the Konnect insole, the basic concept was we spend a lot of time on traction in athletic footwear, cleats, outsole patterns, and so forth, because we want the foot to be able to tell the shoe when to stop. And when the shoe stops, we want it to be stopped, because there is no performance benefit to slipping, right? If you're doing any athletic sport, slipping does not matter. So right now what happens in most shoes is the shoe stops and your foot keeps going. That's why when you're hiking, you slide down and crash your toes, or running downhill. It's why people blow out the side of their basketball shoes. I mean, basketball shoes are essentially made so if it were a car and a road, they would just put up guardrails, and every time you hit the guardrail, you'd bounce back to the middle of the road. That is not how performance should work.
Yeah.
We know in track and field, we want a permanent or a very close connection between the foot and the spikes. Or if you're jumping, you need to stop and change the direction of those forces from stopped to up. But if you stop and slide and go up, you're not going to jump as high, right? So the question is, where do you use it? The San Francisco Giants had, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 of their players. And we didn't call them and ask them. Mike Yastrzemski started using them. Then he started talking about them. And you know, the hitting coach found them. And because when you hit a baseball, you don't want to be sliding back to your heels and then trying to hit, because you're going the wrong direction to deliver power to the ball. And, you know, it was kind of one of their secret weapons last season. And so running, I am not sure it provides much benefit on a road run or a flat run or even a track run. But when you go out on a trail, and even where you have 3-inch changes and side hill lies, I don't like going on a trail and my one foot lands on the side and I slide over. And so I love it on dirt and uneven terrain for running. What its efficacy will be on the roads, I don't know. We know it's great for golf, because why do you want your cleats in the ground in golf and then your foot slides around? But the tacky surface that we put on, or sticky surface on the top, is a different. We've changed the coefficient of friction between the sock and the shoe. Socks are made of cloth. Top covers of insoles are made of cloth. And so they slide. You just cannot tell me that that's beneficial for most sports, any start-stop sport. So that was the idea, and but we do make a insole that has a regular fabric top cover on it. Mm-hmm. We call it our athletic insole or our comfort insole. That top cover happens to be 100% recycled water bottles. So we think it's really cool that pro teams are using a product that's 85% recycled, and it works super well. And we'll refine sizes and, you know, do we need to make it thinner and where does it work? But we'd love any feedback. And this is where you talk about testing.
Right.
You know, since nobody has made an insole this way, it's hard to say it does this. I just think you have to try.
You can be the gold standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the nice things about go for it, David.
Oh no, I was just saying I'm really happy to hear about all the versatile testing for the footwear as well, because the fit of a cleat is very different than the fit of a running shoe or a racing flat or track spike, etc. And so that is reassuring to me to also know that the fit probably is much more dialed in for those who have played team sports. I played baseball for a long time. Those cleats they're pretty tight in there. And so the fit's much more dialed in, almost like a track spike, but it's definitely more robust to start, stop, cut, do those types of movements. And so that I can see why it fits the way it fits.
Well, and we made a universal insole, right? It was sort of predicated on great. It also, despite the fact that you're more stable, you have a lot of cushioning. So it's really, I really hope you'll take some time, Dave, and say, you know, does this sticky technology work? and then say, well, for this activity, we need it in a thinner profile or a thicker profile or a different profile, because those two things are, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're trying to understand the technology, and then we can work on fit. Right now we have, universal fit. We're making them from size 5 to 17.
Yeah.
And we made them in each of those whole sizes because we didn't want too much trimming to go on. For you, Nathan, we could give you a size 10 and you could trim a little bit, but I don't want to trim a whole 2 or 3 inches of foam off the front because that's wasteful, right?
That's waste, yeah.
But really anything you guys can do to say, hey, and look, we're not married, right? I want to know if the tacky or grip top is salubrious to performance. Where does it work?
Yeah.
Why does it work? Because again, this is innovation, right? I didn't invent insoles, but it just never made sense to me that your shoes stop and your foot keeps going. I mean, here we are in 2022 and hiking shoes, people are still talking about, oh, my foot slides. And then,
the toes,
so how are we going to solve, our toes slide into the front and I have blisters. And how do we solve it? Well, we just crank the hell out of them. We just tie them down. So now you're restricting the blood flow over your navicular. So this shoe allows you to lace your shoes normally, not put your foot in a cast. And I will also say it really seems to work for people who have low volume foot or narrow feet, because they're kind of sloshing around in their running shoes or their hiking shoes. Mm-hmm. And so somebody with a narrow foot or a low volume foot seems to enhance their experience. So hey, if it doesn't work, we don't have to make it. But if it works, let's find out where and how, and we should let your listeners go on Blumaka.com, and we'll give you a code and
so
let them get a little discount.
Yes. Stuart, I think the biggest thing, what I'm excited about, I didn't get a pair, but I've been able to hear from David and Nathan about this, and then also hearing from you saying, in terms of direction changes, one of the challenges I've had from a lot of patients, given that I tend to specialize more in footwear, is a lot of foot and ankle issues due to shoe compression, especially not just, trail running, like you said. One of the most common things, and outside of that as well in the footwear industry, is going, hey, we know we slide back and forth. We're just going to fix this by just cranking down and compressing the foot as much as possible, which... the foot and ankle doesn't work like that. The whole thing is designed to be able to spread, move, and do different things. If you take that away, you start taking away blood supply to nerves, which is why we have such a big issue with nerve compression in the foot, neuromas, all that kind of stuff. So, especially when I was working at one of the local universities here, and I was trying to figure out, how can I help? Because, again, my expertise is in running footwear, but then trying to help some of these athletes who are playing basketball, playing soccer, and I'm looking at the shoes and going... this is the most unanatomic thing I've ever seen in my life. Who designed this? This looks nothing like a foot. There's the mechanics are not changing. But now when you say this, it's okay, that makes sense that the only way to find stability is just locking everything in. But you turning, twisting, if your foot can't move and stabilize, no wonder we have so many ankle sprains and ACL tears in so many of these other athletic sports.
Well,
and it's just
and again, I my experience, and I could be wrong, but if you're planting your foot and trying to change direction, and the side of your foot goes over the edge of your shoe,
right,
there has to be a higher likelihood that you twist your ankle or blow out your knee.
You could have saved Zion Williams.
Zion
Williamson.
You would really think. I mean,
he's from Duke. I should say his name wrong more often.
But why wouldn't? Tell me why you wouldn't always want your foot to stop when your shoe stops. They should be in sync to whatever degree possible. And if you're going to try to lift weights or push something, do you want to push on it and slip? Or do you want to just push on it? So I don't think we've discovered the best uses for this yet. I mean, in my work boots out on the ranch, you're building fence on a side hill. You're always sliding around inside your boot, and it wears your feet out. So I think there's, but I mean, maybe if you're trying to run a 4:30 marathon or a 4:30 pace for a marathon, is there too much friction? I don't know yet. It's just too early. But what we're doing for insoles, in my view, needs to be rethought. I mean, we're still putting 70-cent insoles in $250 shoes, and I think that's bat poop crazy. The plantar surface of your foot is where your foot and shoe interact in a performance manner, and we've got 70-cent insole, $1.20 insoles.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like putting wood benches
and you're
in
right.
a Mercedes.
And most of the evidence on comfort thus far is that one of the biggest factors when it comes to shoe comfort is actually those first top couple layers of the shoe, right? It's the immediate contact with the plantar surface. So,
and we were talking about things wearing out. Test this.
Yeah.
Many of the insoles that are in shoes go flat between the fitting stool and the car in the parking lot. I mean,
probably true.
It's less than 10 miles, and that doesn't need to be. I mean, here we are. We're making insoles out of waste foam.
Yeah.
If you can make a better insole out of waste foam, why isn't everybody making a better insole out of waste foam? Don't they have the responsibility to clean up their own trash?
They've got enough of it out there that they could definitely do that.
Totally.
For sure. So
and make a better product.
Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the quick things I had a thought on in my testing with these two is you asked, is there too much grip? And I think that, at some level you're going to have shear forces at every interaction point. And sure. I found that when there was such a high, connection between this and my sock, the next friction point is the shear that happens at the skin level. And so depending on the shoe and kind of how it was sitting on my foot, because the sock wasn't going anywhere, the only thing that was taking shear was the compliancy of my skin. And so that repetitive over led to some hot spots. And it was just in one pair of shoes that doesn't matter. But
And probably the sock you're wearing too. We probably need to dial this into the right sock and learn. One thing I know, it'll rip the heck out of. It will eat cotton socks.
Yeah.
Like an old bulldog.
Yeah.
I mean, they won't.
I was wearing feature socks, and they in their own right have a little bit of a grip component to kind of the materials underneath we found, and I've found, at least in wearing them. I know our media guy Bach thinks the same. But I do need to wrap us up. We could probably talk for another hour, and it would be a lot of fun. But again, Stuart, thank you so much for coming on. Blumaka is more than just insoles. And Stuart, you've kind of talked about some of them before we recorded, but please go check out their website to learn more about what they're doing. And the big story there is the use of these recycled materials to create higher quality product. So please go check it out. And we'll be putting out our entire deep review on these insoles just to give our take on them. So you'll be able to read that in time. And we'll be able to talk with Stuart kind of about those as well. I feel like the sign of a good innovator is someone who wants feedback, good or bad. And so it's exciting to kind of work with people like that. So again,
and we don't mean to discriminate against Matthew, send us, come on. I mean, we need to get him involved. I don't know what he did to get left out of the club, but
to be honest, it was actually Matt's fault, because we were sent information of how to order them, and David and I ordered them on our own, and Matt didn't. So it's on Matt.
Oh, my bad.
He's a PhD candidate,
I'm still a student. In a month, hopefully I'll be a candidate.
Right.
But yeah, so it was my fault.
Again,
yeah, usually I'm not paying attention.
Well, let's get a pair on, because
all right, thanks.
I think it's I really appreciate the nod to Blumaka making performance products out of recycled content, better and recycled, and that's an important thing for us. And
definitely.